Hi, I'm Gordon from Camera Labs, and this is my hands-on first looks review of the Fujifilm X-T5, a mirrorless camera with 40 megapixels, 6.2K video, built-in stabilization, tilting screen, yep, not flipping to the side, and the classic control dials that many of you love from previous models. I had a chance to shoot with the final production model, and ahead of my full review, I'll show you what's new and improved. Once my final review is ready, I'll link to it here. Oh, and it's also available in silver or black. Which is your favourite? Announced in November 2022 at a body price of $1699 or pounds, the X-T5 comes hot on the heels of the flagship X-H2 and S, which introduced two new sensors to the lineup. The X-T5 unsurprisingly inherits one of them, and as I think most of us suspected, Fujifilm's opted for the 40 megapixel X-Trans 5HR sensor from the X-H2, coupled with the same X processor 5. I reckon this makes more sense to the X-T5's target audience than the stack sensor of the X-H2S, which may reduce rolling shutter for video and electronic stills, but it does cost a lot more, and it also sticks with the same 26 megapixel resolution as the previous generation. So before even switching on the X-T5, you'll know it will share the same photo quality as the X-H2. So everything that I said in my photo review of that model in terms of resolution, noise, dynamic range, rolling shutter, processing options, film simulations, and focusing are all equally applicable here. So you're getting images with 7728 by 5152 pixels, which equates to roughly a 25% boost in linear resolution over the previous 26 megapixel models like the X-T4, the X-T3, or indeed the X-H2S. Like the X-H2, you should enjoy a boost in real-life detail with any lens that you mount, but for the best results, do couple the X-T5 with one of the sharper tools in the system. Fujifilm's slide of official lenses to make the most of the X-H2 sensor of course equally applies here, and from my own experience I'd strongly consider the latest 18, 23, 33 and 56 primes, which are some of the sharpest lenses that I've tested on any system. And if you're after a smaller lens to complement the more compact body of the X-T5, I'd probably go for the XF35 f2. If 40 megapixels aren't sufficient for you though, the X-T5 also inherits the tripod-based pixel shift mode of the X-H2, which captures a burst of 20 frames while subtly moving the sensor between them. These are then composited in software later to potentially boost the resolution further and reduce colour moire artifacts. It works in the same way as the X-H2, so you can compare the results from my review of that model as a taster. As you might expect, the X-T5 also shares the same top drive speeds as the X-H2, so that's up to 15 frames per second with the mechanical shutter, or up to 20 frames per second with the electronic shutter, albeit the latter incurring a 1.29 times crop and some potential rolling shutter. Fujifilm has, however, reduced the buffer memory on the X-T5, which, coupled with slower SD memory cards, means a much shallower burst depth than the X-H2 in practice. At 15 frames per second, you're now looking at being able to capture around 119 JPEGs or only 19 uncompressed RAW files on the X-T5. But if you reduce the speed to 10 frames per second, you effectively get unlimited JPEG bursts. Deeper bursts is one of the benefits of the X-H2, thanks to its larger buffer memory and also its option to record onto faster CF Express cards. Also inherited from the X-H2 is the same IBIS unit, providing the X-T5 with up to 7 stops of compensation with any lens you mount. This is not only an improvement over the previous X-T4, but impressively fitted into a lighter body to boot, just 557 grams including battery. Now I'm the first to admit that I'm greedy when it comes to features. I loved the size and weight of the older X-T3, but wished it had IBIS. Fujifilm then gave me that with the X-T4, but the body had become thicker and heavier, losing some of its compact charm as a result. Now with the X-T5 we almost get the best of both worlds, with a body that's a little smaller and lighter than the X-T4 while packing in a more effective IBIS unit. Sure, it's still not quite as slim as the X-T3, but in person and in your hands it certainly looks and feels more compact than the X-T4 without losing a comfortable grip. In terms of controls, it's pretty much the same as the X-T4, so starting from the top left of the body, you get a dedicated and lockable dial for ISO, note the new base value of 125, atop a drive mode collar. On the right side of the viewfinder hump is a dedicated shutter dial with the same ballpoint pen style locking mechanism ranging from 1 second to 8,000th of a second in 1 EV increments. Meanwhile, the T position can access the full shutter range in finer increments from 15 minutes to 8,000th of a second for the mechanical shutter, or up to 180,000th of a second for the electronic shutter, the same top speed introed on the X-H2. Beneath this dial is a simple color control switching between stills and movies. Alongside, you'll find a dedicated, albeit still unlockable, exposure compensation dial with a threaded shutter release and power collar between them. Yep, you can still use your vintage mechanical cable releases here on the X-T5. Meanwhile, the front finger and rear thumb dials are decent sized with good tactile feedback as you turn them and push-to-click capabilities to switch their function. On the rear, the story is the same as the X-T4, including an AF on button and a joystick, while the only control difference that I could spot, at least at first, is the Bluetooth shortcut on the disp back button. Oh, and anyone who didn't appreciate the new X-H2S focus mode button on the front, that was me I'm afraid, will be relieved to hear the X-T5 keeps the old 3-position mini dial for quickly switching between single, continuous and manual focus. The ports, battery and card slots all appear to be the same as the X-T4 as well, so starting with a flap on the grip side, you'll find twin SD card slots supporting UHS 2 speeds, so no CF Express for the X-T5, and that in turn rules out internal ProRes video recording and is a contributing factor to those shorter bursts. Opening the top flap on the left side reveals the 3.5mm microphone and 2.5mm remote jacks, while behind the lower flap are USB-C and micro HDMI ports. So like its predecessor, the X-T5 continues to lack a full-size HDMI port and a dedicated headphone jack entirely, although like the X-T4, Fujifilm does supply a USB-C headphone adapter in the box. These are all aspects where the X-H2 and S take the lead, with a dedicated headphone jack, full-size HDMI port, and by swapping one of the SD card slots for the faster CF Express format. The battery is the same, NPW235, introed on the X-T4 and also used on the XH bodies, with Fujifilm claiming 740 frames in economy mode or around 90 minutes of video. Now at this point on previous X-T reviews, I'd say if you want to triple your battery life, simply fit the optional portrait grip that allows you to use 2 extra batteries in addition to the one built into the body. But sadly, this accessory is no longer supported on the X-T5. I suspect they didn't sell too many of them for previous X-T models, but either way it's become another differentiator with the higher end XH series, and it also means that those flagship bodies also enjoy exclusive access to the second optional grip accessory, the one with the improved connectivity. Personally speaking, I'm not that bothered, as I feel the X-T5 is more about achieving a compact size, and I can always carry spare batteries with me if necessary. In terms of composition, the X-T5 inherits the 3.69 million dot OLED viewfinder panel from the X-T3 and X-T4, albeit now with the slightly larger 0.8 times magnification of the X-H2 and S. It may lack the ultimate detail of the 5.76 million dot panel on the flagship XH bodies, but it's certainly very usable. The 3-inch screen now has 1.84 million dots, while in a move that will delight photographers as much as it will frustrate vloggers, Fujifilm has switched the side hinged mechanism of the X-T4 and XH series back for something closer to the X-T3. As such, it'll angle vertically up by just over 90 degrees and down by around 45, while pushing a button on the outer side will unlock a sideways tilt of about 60 degrees, and this allows comfortable low compositions in the portrait orientation. It won't, however, flip out to face forward or back on itself with protection, but I suspect most X-T5 owners won't care about this and will be delighted that Fujifilm's chosen this approach. Fujifilm may be aiming the X-T5 primarily at photographers, but it also inherits many of the X-H2's video capabilities, with the only major casualties of the smaller body being the absence of 8K and the longest potential recording times, while the lack of a CF Express slot again rules out internal ProRes recording. But you're still getting 1080 or 4K uncropped at 24 to 30p or at 50 to 60p with a 1.14 times crop. 1080 and 4K are also available in 16:9 or the slightly wider DCI shapes. A 6.2K mode is also available at 24 to 30p, although unlike the XH2 this incurs a 1.23 times crop, perhaps implying a 1:1 pixel readout. This framing is also used to generate oversampled 4K in the optional 4K HQ mode, albeit again between 24 and 30p and again without 1.23 times crop. Slow motion seems to be directly inherited from the X-H2, so it's 1080 only at 100 to 240p, all with that 1.23 times crop. Meanwhile, graders get the F-Log2 profile, and there's also the chance to output 6.2K RAW over HDMI to a compatible recorder. I'll put the actual internal recording times to the test in my final review, which I'll link to here, but I'm expecting the smaller body with less chance for heat dissipation, not to mention no support for the optional XH cooling fan, will mean that the camera overheats much faster. But again, the X-T5 isn't aimed at heavy video shooters, and with that said, here's my verdict so far. The Fujifilm X-T5 packs the sensor, stabilization and shutter from the flagship X-H2 into a slightly smaller and lighter version of the X-T4 with the screen articulation of the X-T3. As such, it can't help feeling a bit like a greatest hits compilation, but equally one that's likely to top the charts. It's certainly no exaggeration to say this is the body many of the Fuji faithful have been waiting for, with a feature set cherry-picked to delight photographers. With the X-H2 and S topping the range, the X-T5 can, however, only inherit so much without treading on their toes, but I do feel that Fujifilm's made some sensible cuts without compromising the overall experience for the target audience. Indeed, many will actually prefer the X-T5's approach. So for an extra $300 or so, the X-H2 gives you a high-res viewfinder, a faster CF Express slot, deeper buffer, internal ProRes recording and 8K video, headphone jack and full-size HDMI port, not to mention access to those grip accessories. But you may not want or need any of them, and as for its side hinge screen and PASM control dial, they're features that might actually turn you off. And that's the beauty of Fujifilm's approach of gradually deploying their latest sensors across multiple bodies with different styles, features and price points, as before long there will be one that suits you just fine. The X-T5 becomes the second body to feature the X-Trans 5 sensor, and I've no doubt a future X Pro and X100 will have it too. So the choice comes down to which body style and again price point suits you the best. But historically the XT series has always proven one of the most popular in the lineup. I see absolutely no reason for this to change, with the X-T5 looking like the perfect upgrade for earlier XT owners, not to mention a highly compelling entry for those new to the X system. I certainly look forward to fully testing it, which again I'll link to here when it's ready, but in the meantime the X-T5 looks like it'll be a very successful camera for Fujifilm. I'd love to hear what you think, especially if you own a previous XT model and are thinking of upgrading. Don't forget to subscribe and click that notification bell so you don't miss out on my final review when it's ready. Oh, and there's a new 30mm macro that I'll be reviewing too. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye.